So after reading A Father's Story by Andre Dubus, I was really shocked by what happened in it. I think it was really shocking. Like, you didn't expect it to happen. Um, I thought it was really interesting, the question that was in the presentation about like a key or significant quote in the story, because I thought there were a lot of good quotes in it. Honestly, I really enjoyed a lot of them. I liked the one thing because he's talking about meeting with Father Paul. And he says, "One night, Father Paul and I talked about faith. It was long ago, and all I remember is him saying, 'Belief is believing in God. Faith is believing that God believes in you.'" And I just thought that was interesting because, as it mentions in the presentation, this tackles Catholicism again, as some of our other stories have that we've read so far, and I think that's interesting. And I think that within the story, Luke Ripley is really like struggling with his faith, and also what happens with his daughter. I think that makes him question his faith and everything like that. And I really liked how they touched on that, and I don't know, touched on like Catholicism and religion in that way. And then as far as the big shocking moment of his daughter hitting the man with her car and then killing him, I thought that it was just really, it really touched on fatherhood in a way that I don't think I've ever read before in a short story, because I think that because he chooses not to call the police, and he chooses not to call an ambulance or anything like that, and not to, because he doesn't want anything to happen to his daughter and doesn't want to see her go through that pain. And I think that's just like, it's really interesting because then at the end of the story he says he wouldn't do that for his sons, his older sons. And I think it's just really interesting to read about like the special bond that he had like with his daughter, even though he didn't see her that much. She came once a year to where he lived. And I really like the end of the story. I thought was interesting, and it really questions like, I think Catholicism, like I think that's what Andre Dubus is trying to do. And then it's like he's talking to God, Luke is, and he says, "You love her more than you love me." And then he says, "I love her more than I love truth." And then you love in weakness, he says, "As you love me, I say, and I go with an apple or carrot out to the barn." And I think that's the last lines of the story, and I think that just really hits with you, because I think it just like, not only is it touching on Catholicism, but it's touching on like parenthood, fatherhood, parenthood, and that special bond between a parent and their child. And I think it's just really interesting. And I think it's also relating it to maybe religion, like God being the parent and Luke being the child in that way. And I think that's really interesting. So it's questioning Catholicism, it's questioning between the relationship between a parent and their child. And I think that Luke is definitely like, he misses, because he's divorced from his wife, he misses being close with his kids. And I think that's really interesting and just touching. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed, I really liked this story, as well as the things they carried that we read this week. I really enjoyed those the most. I think this one just was really touching, really heartbreaking. All the stories this week I think were really heartbreaking. But yeah, I really enjoyed this story because I think it's relatable to any parent, especially any father, and maybe people who are Catholic as well or grew up Catholic. I think those issues like you can relate to. But yeah, I felt that I could relate to it even though I don't fall in those categories. I think it's just a relatable, heartbreaking story.